So let me actually start with the objection, right? Which is this word that comes up a lot. You know, his opponents have been using it. Nikki Haley and Joe Biden talk about chaos. Let's even just start with whether what they're talking about is even such a bad thing, right? Because chaos, most people have a negative connotation with it, and maybe not chaos, but creation, right? Creative spirit. I think it's a big part of what Donald Trump brought to Washington, D.C. the first time around. When you take a machine, what government bureaucrats like to think of as a well-oiled machine, but the machine isn't doing what it's supposed to do, what its founders created it to do. At a certain level, you have to take a hammer and break that machine. And so sometimes there's going to be broken glass on the ground. Call that chaos, call that what you will, call it creative destruction. That's what's going to be required to actually revive a broken, institutionalized federal bureaucracy. And I think that some of that bureaucracy doesn't just exist in the federal government. It exists in other parts of our culture as well. The people who run universities, the people who run major media institutions have become so ossified in their way of thinking that once in a while, every generation or so, it is more than healthy. It's required to be able to bring a jackhammer, not a chisel, but a chainsaw, and really cut the excess fat, really challenge the status quo. And so I think that's what Donald Trump did. And so some people will call that chaos. I call it a requirement of every generation. Our founding fathers, people could have said the same thing in 1776.
Right.
Oh, Thomas Jefferson is sowing chaos in the United States of America. Well, we wouldn't have the United States of America if we hadn't done it. And so I think people internally for themselves are hungry for it. But there's the inner part of people's psyche that makes them want to bend the knee to some status quo authority. And I think that the question is, which side of you is actually speaking? Because I think a lot of people have that sheep-like tendency in them. And if they're acting on their sheep-like tendencies, many of them are not going to go for Donald Trump. But if they're acting on the tendency that I think is more innate to most people, right? The authenticity, the real you of who you are, not the super ego that tells you, maybe you get from your upbringing or whatever that tells you, you're not supposed to think this way. You're not supposed to vote for Donald Trump. You're not supposed to want a little bit of chaos in the system. Then maybe they would go the more traditional direction. But I think the inner self of most people favors the creation of the new, favors the spirit of the American Revolution. I think America was founded on our essential humanity, that we are the unafraid, the explorers, that we as human beings are different from animals because we can believe in something bigger than ourselves, that we can behave in ways that make short-term personal trade-offs for the long-run betterment of a nation and of ourselves. And I think if we're able to awaken that part of our human nature, then I think it's going to manifest itself in what is a major victory that could shock the system once again this year. So that's, a lot there.